Hello and welcome to the Kick in the Creatives podcast, hosted by myself, Sandra Busby, and my fellow creative Tara Roskell, offering you interviews, inspiration, motivation, and a gentle prod in the right direction. And for lots more information, challenges, and other useful tools to help you get creating, you can go to www.kickinthecreatives.com. And of course, this is where you can also find today's show notes. Enjoy the show. Welcome to today's episode, and today we're going to talk about our favourite art materials. But before we get onto that, as this is our last episode before the Christmas break, we want to give big snoggy hugs to everyone who supported us through Ko-fi this year. We get a lot of lovely messages with our donations, or rather your donations, letting us know how much you enjoy what we do, but it does cost us money, so all of your donations go towards those costs, and it helps us to be able to keep doing what we're doing. So thank you to everyone who helps us out.
I'm not giving people snoggy hugs, by the way.
You're not giving snoggy hugs?
No, I wouldn't do that in a non-COVID situation. I'm not doing it now.
Okay, I'm giving virtual snoggy hugs.
Okay.
We also want to thank everyone who's been sharing their work with us on social media. So lots have caught my eye. Well, so much isn't there to choose from, as always, but I've been loving Eva Falk Wall Simpson. She did the Kit Collage Challenge, and she's made some really quirky images using collage. And I think my favourite one had to be the one that she did with a seagull. Did you see that one with like a little gift being handed to this? Oh, so I don't know. It just made me smile. I've been loving those. Who else? Joanna Brown. She was doing Lie November, and they were really good. And I really liked the ones that she printed on the page of like a novel, and that created some extra interest in the background. She just did kind of black. I'm pretty sure all of them were black, and they were things like crows, and they just had this kind of magical, mystical feel about them. I really enjoyed those. Did you see those?
I can't remember those either. I'm sure I did see them. Yeah.
Have you been on our group at all this month?
I have. I've had lots of stuff going on outside as well. So.
And Dorothy Sinise, she's been creating some really quirky collage, and I think she's been incorporating it with your favourite medium, Tara, which is of course Neocolor.
Lovely.
So they've been really bright and fun. I won't ask if you've seen those, because clearly you've not really been taking any notice of anything.
I have been, but I have had stuff going on, outside of that. Poorly dog and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
But I've been loving Catherine C. Slater's liner prints and monoprints. Now, have you seen those, Sandra? I'm hoping you say no.
No, I haven't actually.
Well, they're absolutely lovely, and Catherine does some amazing work. And then we've got Suze C, and she's been creating some great poems using the prompts. She's doing a bit of her own thing, but using some of our prompts to start those off.
Yes, I've seen some of those, yeah.
And I really like a sketch of a beetle, the car, a beetle.
Oh, I saw that.
So good, by Michael Beckett.
Yeah, I loved it. It was so quirky. Did you notice the registration plate?
No.
Oh, you didn't see the registration plate? It was KITC for Kick in the Creatives.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Can't believe you didn't notice that.
No, you see, that's what I'm like at the moment. Anyway, what is new with you?
Well, things have finally quietened down a little bit of work, which is just such a relief, because I was going a bit do-dally over the amount of work I was getting. But it means that I have managed to start a new painting, but not just one. I've got 2 paintings on the go, which is really unusual for me. But the plan...
I've seen bits of one on Instagram. Have you not?
Yeah.
The other one?
No, I haven't been sharing the other one, because I thought, do you know what? I thought I would share the progress of one, and then I would unveil my finished painting, hopefully before Christmas. And then I'd do a ta-da moment, go, ta-da, I've also done another one. But obviously that may not happen. I don't know. More work might come in. It might be manic suddenly. Christmas is always manic. Well, mind you, saying that, we just had the new Christmas rules come in, haven't we? So I don't think it's going to be a very manic Christmas for anybody this year. But I am going to, well, my plan is to get both the paintings done before Christmas. Did I tell you I was supposed to be going to Thailand this Friday as well for 2
Yeah,
weeks? Well,
we
3 weeks we were
texted
going for
about
this
it,
year.
weren't we, last night?
Yeah. So, obviously, I'm a bit gutted that I won't be going to Thailand on the holiday we were going to take this year. But I suppose on the upside, I will get more time to paint. So, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the silver lining.
So are you gonna
So
take
yeah,
some time off instead? Are you gonna take, like, a couple of weeks off? Because
we'll
you'd
take
normally take 2 or 3 weeks, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we'll take a couple of weeks off over Christmas, but we would have done that anyway. So it just means we don't get as much time off. But I say it's fairly quiet at the moment anyway, so it's manageable and things have calmed down quite a bit.
So are you still sending emails to yourself?
Do you know what I did? I think in the end I sent about 4,
Yeah.
and I haven't felt like I needed to since then.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, anyone's going to say what is she on about?
Yeah, listen to the previous episode where we
Yeah.
talk about, dealing with overwhelm, and you were saying how you sent emails to yourself, weren't you?
Yeah, it really worked as well. What about you? What's new with you?
Well, I feel this is really sad, but I couldn't actually think of anything new.
Oh no.
And I guess that is because we're on lockdown, and I don't know, I just kind of feel like I'm, oof, like you come to the end of the year and
Yeah.
it's been like squeezed like toothpaste, and you just got the end dregs left, basically. It's a lovely
I
way to
think
put it.
everybody's the same. And do you know what? Every year, I notice, and I'm sure you notice, that the group really quietens down at this
Yeah.
time of year as well. Because rather than scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of posts every day, it really does slow down. It's because people are just busy and they're burnt out. And they're just winding down, I think, towards the Christmas break. And it's not a bad thing at all. I think sometimes
It's normal,
you
isn't it? I
it's
think,
totally
yeah.
normal,
I mean,
totally
I
normal.
have been doing, I think I told you before, I've been doing these like doodly faces where bits of animals come out of them. So I'm sort of overlapping things. So you might have an ear, but then the ear of the person becomes the eye of some cartoony type animal. And they're still kind of in the ilk of my faces, but they're slightly different.
I saw one, a couple of days ago, and I thought, "What?" But the thing is, what was interesting is although it was, different than what you have been doing, it was very obviously your work. You instantly know that it's one of yours, no
Would
matter
you?
what.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Whether you change the way you do things or not, it's 100%, recognizable as Tara
Well, I was trying
Roskell.
to do some of the faces I was doing before, which are kind of exaggerated,
Mm.
distorted, and they're just not working at the moment. Or, I'll do them and I'm not happy with them, if you know what I mean.
Maybe it's boredom a little
Yeah,
bit.
well, I think I've just got to mix it up a bit, and I think I can probably go back to it. And also, I think when I do those, because I like to use reference for those, I need the perfect reference because I have to absolutely love the picture and the face in order for it to work for me. That makes
Would you
sense?
like me to send you a photo of my
No,
face then?
you've done
That'll
that.
cute.
No.
You love my face,
Yes. Yeah. No, we won't bother.
and there'd be lots of meaning behind it.
Yeah. Okay. No, let's move on.
Oh, so yeah, not lots new with you
No,
then.
not a lot.
Yeah, well, I'm sure things will get back to normal after Christmas, and I think you're right. I think if you are naturally feeling like you need to lean a different direction for a while, it's absolutely what you should do because I think that's how we evolve as artists, isn't it?
It is strange though because I do worry about it because I feel like I've started to build this kind of strong. So if you saw one of those faces, you would know it as mine, and it does slightly worry me that I'm going off in a different direction.
I don't think you should worry about that at all because, like I say, regardless of you doing something differently, it's still absolutely your work and it's recognizable as your work.
I do have a real urge as well to do some characters, and I am
Yeah.
wondering whether I should set up a separate Instagram account for those or to do
We
them.
could do. I mean, if you were worried about that, a lot of
Yeah,
people do that, don't they?
yeah,
Or you could put those in your stories.
yeah. I did think about that as well.
That's another way of doing it. So you post the things you normally do on your Instagram and then you put those bits in your stories.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, we better get on to today's
We better,
topic.
yeah.
So, we are talking about the art materials that Tara and I love the most, as well as some of the ones our guests have mentioned along the way. And we are going to start with the humble pencil. So, Tara, tell us what pencils you like.
Yes, well, I absolutely love, and I've talked about this a little bit, the Stabilo All Black Pencil. And I discovered this through a course by Deb Wiz, which is over on the Cara Bullock platform. And she was using in her work, she does these really cool abstract faces. And she just said that they write on pretty much anything. So I thought, oh, I wonder if they'd write over Neocolors. Because the trouble with Neocolors, I've used markers and stuff over them before, but it completely wrecks your marker. And not much will go over because it's kind of a shiny, waxy surface, but they actually work really well over the top of that. So, yeah, definitely something I love. They're a bit like a China Graph pencil, but the thing is, they are water soluble. So you could use it over the top, but then if you wanted to soften the edge, you can do that as well. And you use them on glass, don't you?
Yeah, I do. When you say they're water soluble, actually, no, I didn't actually know that.
Did
So that
you?
means I can wash it off of whatever I
Yeah,
put it on, I presume.
yeah,
I use it because obviously as an oil painter, I use lots of little jars. I get my mum to collect those little tiny jam jars you get. And anyone I know, keep your jam jars. But when I go from painting session to painting session, sometimes I forget what's in what jar because you mix your mediums up and you're like, oh God, is that what's in there? Is that the solvent or is that the medium? So what I do is I use this Stabilo All pencil to just write on the jar what it is. It just writes on glass and it's as easy as writing on paper. So it's really good for that.
and they're actually really nice as well if you use them in a sketchbook. So they kind of look a bit like a black coloured pencil, don't they, really?
Do you know, this is what's funny. As we're talking, I'm thinking, do you know, I've never ever used this pencil to draw with at
Oh.
all. So
Well,
I'm going to try that. Is it the thing I don't like about using pencil in a sketchbook is that they smudge. So when you shut your book, you get the imprint, you get like almost a print of your drawing on the
yeah.
opposite page. So do they smudge still?
I don't know because I honestly don't worry too much, but I don't always draw on the other side. So if I do something I like, I won't draw on the, you know what I mean? So the page above it,
Yeah.
there won't be anything on there, so I don't worry about it. But what I like about them is obviously because they're water soluble and they're much denser black than say a graphite pencil. So you can
Yeah.
draw with them and then you can soften the edge, which is a
Yes.
really nice kind of
Yeah.
effect. Yeah, but I don't know about that. I have to test
And
it out.
do you know, one of the reasons I'm not keen on using pencil is that they can appear quite wishy-washy, can't
Yeah.
they? And sort of really pale and I like the idea that it's black.
Yeah, it's punchier,
Yeah.
much punchier.
Yeah. Well, I really like the mechanical pencils, and my favourite one is the Pentel Graph Gear 1000. And I've tried quite a few different types in the past, but this one is by far the best that I've tried so far. And you can retract the lead in to this one by just clicking the, you know, the little handle bit that you use to clip on things.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you can press it and it just snatches the lead back in. So it's really handy when you're taking it out on a sketching trip because you're not going to break your lead. So a lot of them don't have that. Um, I find it really good for quick sketches and fine detail. But obviously, you can get different widths. And I use the zero point 0.7 one rather than the zero point 0.5 because I don't want it to look like a technical drawing. I prefer to be able to have a wider line, I
Yeah, I know what
suppose.
you mean. I don't like
Yeah.
thin ones either.
And they never need sharpening, which is brilliant. The one thing I find really, really frustrating, though, about a mechanical pencil is that they do not come with instructions of how to change the leads.
No, no.
And I still am not 100% sure how to do it. And I've broken two, not of this particular pencil, but I've broken two trying to do it. And I clearly do it wrong. So, and I've looked for a YouTube video on the on the subject, and I haven't managed to find one. So,
No, well, I didn't
yeah.
actually realise until recently, and the people are gonna be like, rolling their eyes at us saying this, but I didn't realise that you could load it up with more than one lead.
No,
So
no, because I think I've since I don't know if was it you I spoke to and you said you just put a bunch of them in the
yeah,
top and drop them.
yeah.
Well, I was kind of pressing the button at the one end and trying to feed the lead in
Yeah, I've done that
through the
before.
point. So yeah, it's
I'm just trying to look at the one I've got here. I've got one on my desk. What's this? I've got a Faber-Castell one, and that's really actually that's a .7 as well. So it's we've obviously like the same sort of width on those. I
yeah,
never used
yeah.
to use it. I've had these sitting in my pencil case for like years, and I didn't use them. And then I watched not a YouTube video. I watched a tutorial video on a website somewhere, and the guy was using one of these, and I started using it. I thought, I actually quite like it. It is,
I really like them.
yeah. It's so much of a pain sharpening the pencil all the time, isn't it? But and these are so
Yeah.
much better for that.
Well, you were talking about Stabilo oil pencil
Yeah.
earlier that's water soluble, which I didn't know is water soluble. But I was actually going to mention the fact that I've got some Derwent Graphitone water soluble graphite pencils. So rather than the pencils being encased in a wooden barrel, the whole pencil is made from graphite. So it's more like a stick of water soluble graphite in the shape of a pencil.
Oh yeah.
So you can make really wide marks with them, obviously by using on its side because it's just the lead's huge.
Yeah. Does it
And
make your
once
hand messy though when you're drawing with it?
no, because it's got paper around it,
Oh
so it's
right.
like it's encased. Although it's not got the wooden casing, it has got like a paper label all the way round.
Ah, that sounds good.
Yeah, it is, and you can sharpen it in a sharpener like you would a normal pencil because it's the same size as a pencil. But once you've made your drawing, you can brush areas with water just like you would watercolor pencils. And of course, once you've done that, the graphite doesn't smudge like a dry pencil would.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I have actually got a pencil that's, water soluble, like a
Mm,
graphite, but it's not like that. It's just the normal wooden case one. So,
yeah.
the tip of these must be really chunky then. The whole
Yeah,
thing.
really chunky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that
Yeah.
sounds good.
But also, one other thing I want to mention, I don't know whether you've ever used this Tara or not, you can get graphite powder.
No,
No.
like
Well,
gunpowder.
gunpowder. Graphite powder is, well, graphite just ground up into a powder. And I've got some of this and I very rarely ever use it. But when I am doing a drawing of like a portrait pencil
Yeah.
drawing, particularly when I'm drawing babies, I sometimes use that powder. And the way I use it is I dip a really, really soft brush into the powder. I tap off the excess and then I just brush really lightly across the paper where I want a little bit of very subtle shadow that's really soft. And then I just blow away the excess. And that works really well because you're not using the pencil at all. It's almost like you are brushing a shadow on.
Yeah.
And you can get the charcoal version as
Yeah,
well. I
I've
mean,
heard of the charcoal. I've
yeah,
not heard of
that's
the
very
graphite. Yeah.
it's very black, very and that is good for covering great big areas like on a sheet of paper of charcoal. And I used to love Willow Charcoal. I don't use it anymore because obviously being an oil painter, I can't really be using these powdery,
Yeah.
things like pastels and chalks and charcoals because I don't really want that floating around my art studio to settle into my oil paintings. So I don't use them anymore. But I used to really like charcoal, but I don't like getting filthy hands like you. I don't like that.
No, I must admit, I've never really got the knack of charcoal pencils or anything like that. I've
Mm,
tried all the sticks. I've got some like holders, which makes it better. So I've got like quite chunky charcoal sticks, but then you put it in
yeah.
a holder. I can't remember what make they are. That's good, isn't it? We're talking about art materials. I can't remember what make they are. Oh,
Yeah, but
Kohinoor
oh yeah.
holders, and then charcoal sticks, and they're wide ones. Um, but I do kind of like drawing with them, but it's that thing with a sketchbook where you saying how everything rubs off,
Yeah,
and
that's the trouble. Yeah.
it does it a lot.
I think it's interesting because I love willow charcoal sticks,
Yeah,
but for that reason I don't bother using it really because like I haven't got any faith in how long it will last even if you fix it. But what I don't like is charcoal pencils. So it's interesting, isn't it, that
yeah.
I like the willow sticks, but not the actual pencils. But say it's not a medium I use. But the thing about charcoal, you can put it on and lift it off really easily. So it's quite a forgiving. It's very forgiving medium, really.
Yeah, well, I see people's work on Instagram. I think, oh, I absolutely love that. And you often
Yeah,
find it's charcoal. I think it's Bluebird Dada Art. I think she uses a lot of charcoal and black pastels. They
yeah,
look absolutely amazing. And I think, oh, I want to do that because you get that softness, don't you? And
yeah. I
I
love it
find,
with chalk as well
yeah,
because that's where it's really good for things like portraits because you can use the charcoal in such a way that you can kind of move it around almost. So it's a bit almost like the drawing medium of oils where you can kind of
yeah.
push it around a bit, you know.
I think I might have to try it again because didn't we have Chris Riddell and he was talking about Conte pencils, wasn't he? And I think
Yes,
they are, aren't they, some form of charcoal?
they're similar, but I think they're more compressed.
Ah, okay. So
They're kind of like almost like a cross between charcoal to fill, you know, the pencils and pastel pencils, aren't they? But I think they're just more dense.
I mean, I have got one, but I've hardly used it. But when he said he was using that, and I would never guess that's what he was using. I mean, his stuff looks amazing. So if that could transfer to me by using a Conte, I would. I would definitely use one.
Oh yeah, I agree. I've got Conte pencils actually. I've got their typical sanguine colour,
Yeah.
like the old masters used to use, and then I've got the white and I've got a black. And they work really well. They look really great when they're used on the tan, you know, the buff
Oh yes.
paper
Yeah.
or the grey paper. So you should try it for that. They're really good.
I might try it again. I might try some Conte and some charcoal. I
Yeah,
think.
and they're not as smudgy. They're not, and nowhere near as smudgy
Well, as charcoal pencils.
as charcoal. No.
Yeah.
No.
Anyway, should we move on to pens now?
Yes.
Okay, one of my favourite brands of pens now is the Sakura Pigma Sensei Manga. God, how many words? Sakura Pigma Sensei Manga waterproof pen. And you actually recommended these to me, didn't you? Um, yeah, go on.
I can't remember.
Yeah, you did.
Was it when we were in London?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
when we were in London, and I was looking for. I really like sort of fibre tip pens. So they're almost like
Mm,
a felt tip, and I wanted something that was waterproof but had that same kind of feel.
yeah.
Before that, I was using the Unipin pens, which I still like, but they're much more precise. Whereas these pens are really smooth, much more like a fibre tip pen. And I really like the thicker versions of these pens. I like the point 0.6 and the 1. Love those. And the good thing is because they are um, permanent, they're water resistant, that you can then go over the top of them with other mediums like watercolor or whatever.
Mm.
Yeah, so another one of my favourites is the Papermate Flair felt tip pen. Now, I'm guessing you can get these in any old stationery store because they're not like a specific art tool, but I absolutely love them. And I use the black ones. I use them in a sketchbook, and again, you can soften them because they're water soluble. You can just take a water brush, soften them. They just give such lovely, subtle effects, and they're quite chunky as well. I'm guessing they're like a point 0.7 or something. The ends, or maybe even thicker than that. But I absolutely love those. I think I gave you one of those.
Yeah, I got some of those and they remind me a bit like a felt tip pen.
Yeah.
But what I'm not so keen on is they're more of a grey, they're not that dense black colour, which I like. They're
Oh, I
kind
think
of
they
quite
are.
a subtle, don't you think they're more of a subtle black,
Only when you
perhaps?
put the, thingy on
The
there.
water,
Yeah,
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 I really like those. And
yeah. Well,
they do come in other colours, like, I think they do well, do quite a few different colours, but I've only ever used the black.
mm. Well, I love the Pentel brush pen, Japanese brush pen. And I think Laura Frankstone also mentions that she loves those in episode 63. And so if you want to see how versatile those pens are, you just need to look at her blog. And it's interesting because I'd never tried one before. And I think when we went to one of our sketching trips together, you said, "Oh, try this." And I hated it when I first tried it. I didn't like it at all. I felt like I had absolutely zero control over this thing. But you persuaded me down the line, "Oh, why don't you try have a go at that brush pen again?" And I did. And once I got the hang of it, I started really loving it. And now I couldn't do without it. I love it. I absolutely love my brush pen.
Well, I couldn't understand why you wouldn't like it because obviously you're really good with a brush from the oil
Yeah.
pen, like me. So I thought you would be great with it, once you got the knack of it, because you can get such versatile lines, can't you? You go really thin and really chunky.
You can, and you can kind of get dry brush marks with it as well. I think what I didn't like about it when I first tried it, 'cause I kind of I like to feel in control over what, medium I'm using. And I felt like I had no control because the marks were quite unpredictable at times.
Yeah.
But having got more of used to it, I more embrace those lively lines instead of fight against them.
Well, I think that's originally why Jake Parker set up Inktober, wasn't it? I think he wanted to practice learning how to use a brush pen, I
Oh, I did
believe.
not know that.
Yeah, because he did it on his own the first
Yes.
time, and I think
Yeah.
it was to learn how to use a brush pen.
Oh, right. I knew it was he wanted to get better with ink. I didn't realise it's
I think
specifically a
so.
brush pen. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I say I didn't like it at first, but I really love it now, and it's something that I always have in my sketching kit. But generally, my go-to pen is the Lamy Safari, and I use the broad nib. But I also have got one that's called the Lamy Calligraphy pen. And that's really interesting to sketch with because the lines are so varied because it's much broader. Another one I've got as part of my kit is the Platinum Carbon pen, and that is really fine, much finer than any of my other pens, and it's perfect for detail like facial features and adding hatching. And obviously, that one is permanent. So I tend to use a water soluble ink in my Lamy Safari, but then I'll use the Platinum Carbon to do things that I don't want to dissolve in water.
And you do
So
that on the
that's
same
really
drawing,
good.
don't you? Because
Yeah.
I know you made a video for us, didn't you, on our YouTube channel? And
Mm.
that combines the two, so you could soften the water soluble ink, and the other bit stays put.
Yeah. I think I did a video on was it a girl walking down the street with I used
Yeah.
the Lamy and I used the Platinum Carbon, used a bit of watercolor, so it kind of gives you, an idea of how it works. But the other pen I've got as well. Have you heard of the Sailor pen?
Yes, I've got one. I didn't get on
Oh,
with it.
have you? You didn't get on with
No.
it. Well, you know what you need to do, don't you? You need to try it again.
Yeah,
We'll have this conversation next year and you're going, I love it now.
yeah.
It's my favourite.
Probably, yeah.
Um, it's the make I believe is called Fude de Manen. I don't know if I've said that right. Fude de Manen, which I believe Lynn Chapman is a big fan of. We interviewed her on episode 45, and I can't remember if she mentioned it on there or if it's in one of her books. But anyway, what's different about this pen is that the tip is angled at 55 degrees. So you can get some really thick lines with it. But also, if you turn it the other way, you can get some really fine lines. So it's really versatile once you get the hang of using it. But it does take a bit of getting used to, though. Obviously, you found that when you tried it.
Yeah, no, I was just marvelling at how many times you managed to say "really" in those
Really,
sentences.
really,
Yeah.
really. Do you know what's funny? When I first wrote my
Really
notes,
funny.
it's really funny. When I first wrote my notes, and it was only yesterday that I noticed it, I thought, is it that? I'd called it a soldier pen.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Really?
really. Yeah, I called it a soldier pen. So I could have,
Oh,
been,
dear.
looked a bit of an idiot.
Yeah.
A sailor pen. It's a sailor pen. Um, Finally, in the studio, I do love my dip pen, and this is another thing I used to hate the dip pen. I could never find one I got on with, but I always felt like when you watch these videos and it just looks so cool when people are using them. It's like,
Oh,
I really
yeah.
want to be able to do that. Finally, I found one I liked, which is a Zig Cartoonist, and I do use it to draw cartoons and quick sketches. I don't find dip pens at all practical to take out and about. I really don't. It's no point. But in the studio, they can be quite fun because they are more unpredictable. And also, the choice of nib makes a huge difference to the type of line quality you get. I like mine to be quite flexible. And I think I remember once in an old episode sort of saying, God, if anyone can recommend some flexible nibs, please, can you recommend someone? And Victoria Chan, who's one of our listeners, she emailed me and said, right, have you tried and I can't remember what it's called now, Bause, Bause. Anyway, I had a look online and I ordered some of those and they were really nice, but some of them are so flexible that they were almost uncontrollable. And I wasn't so keen on some of those, but I did find one sort of between the two. So it's basically nibs are really cheap. So it's trial and error. Just find what suits you. There's all sorts of makes.
You asking, I remember when we've talked about art materials before, and you asked me, one or the other, do all the nibs fit all the holders? Did you know
Yes.
they do? They do.
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
So now this Zig Cartoonist pen, and I'm sure it's probably the same with all of them, whatever nibs I have bought to try all fit in my pen.
All from different brands, yeah?
Yeah. But what I found with the nibs that came with the pen are very hard and scratchy. And I don't like that. I want an element of flex so that I can get a varied line.
Yeah, know what you mean.
I mean, some of them, there's one, it was so flexible that basically what happened is as soon as you put it on the page, the ink just flowed out like a lake. And then you just go from a massive blob to a completely dry line in a second. And I just don't like that.
No,
I don't like that.
Do you
But some
know,
people embrace it, don't they? Some people embrace the blobs.
yeah, I mean, I really like a dip pen. I don't use them very often, but I use them a bit through that, find my art style thing.
Yeah.
And I do love the character because it gives you such character, doesn't it? A dip pen. But do you know,
Yeah.
I cannot get on with fountain pens. I've tried. I've tried the Sailor, and I think the problem with the Sailor is I bought cartridges that had water resistant ink in, and they were the
Yeah.
proper ones. But I
Yeah.
think even though they're the proper ones, because I use it so infrequently, it clogged.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't work for me because I think you need to use them all the time or clean them out a lot, one or the other. And then I've got a Lamy Safari, but I just don't like the feel of it. I just find it kind of monotonous. I don't feel like I get a difference in line. I'd rather have a bit of difference.
You probably would really get on with the Lamy Calligraphy pen.
Does it
Y
go on smooth? Does it
Yes,
flow?
goes on really smooth, but it's the nib is wide, so your lines are really varied. Really, really varied.
Really, really?
When we go out on a sketching trip, you must use it. You must try it because I
Okay.
think you'd really like that.
Well, I'll perhaps put it on my wish list. Are they expensive?
I don't think so,
Oh,
no.
well, I might have a look
No.
after this.
No more expensive than the other Lamy.
No.
Um,
I actually bought the other Lamy with a voucher I got last Christmas, and
yeah.
I'd probably used it only a handful of times because I just thought, I don't. It just feels a bit scratchy to me. But that's because I'm so used to using like felt
What
tip
nib
type pens, isn't
what
it?
nib are you using? Are you
I
using the broad nib?
I didn't know there was. I don't
Yeah,
know.
there's two nibs. I've got two Lamy pens,
Right.
apart from the Lamy Calligraphy. One's a broad nib and one's not. And the one that isn't is pretty dull line. It's more like using
I wonder if
it
that's what I've got.
sounds to me like you've got that one. But even the broad nib one, to be fair, isn't particularly varied, I would
Right.
say. But I do like using that with the water soluble ink because then you can,
Yeah, well, tell me a bit more about inks because I don't know that much. I know you can get special ones now, can't you? That you can use that are
yeah.
permanent because it used to be quite hard to get those, didn't it, for fountain pens?
Yeah. I mean, for the Lamy pens I've got, I actually just use the Lamy ink because, it's made by the same company as the pens, so that's not going to do any damage to the pens. But I like it as well because it's water soluble, so I can make a tonal sketch really, really quickly by just using a wet brush and then pulling the pigment where I want some dark tones. But I don't always obviously want my lines to dissolve with water, so I use Noodles Ink. Have you ever heard of Noodles Ink?
Yeah, I might even have some.
Well, Noodles Ink is water resistant, but it won't clog your fountain pen. So I use that in all of the pens that I want to
For fountain
like
type ones.
put a
Yeah.
line down and keep it there. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So I'll just use that across the board. There is another one called Higgins Magic Ink. Maggot
Nice.
ink. Yeah, Higgins Black Magic ink. And I use that with my dip pens. That's also water resistant. It's a really, really rich black as well, but I don't know if it would be any good in a fountain pen. And with fountain pens, if in doubt, leave it out definitely, because you don't. They're not cheap, are they? Fountain pens, so you don't want to be ruining them every
So
time you use them.
do you buy cartridges with these inks in, or have you got some sort of refiller thing?
I use those refiller ones. So most fountain pens come with a cartridge, but you can get a converter. So like with the Lamy, I just ordered a cartridge converter, and then what you do is you just choose your own ink and you suck it up into this little vessel and stick it in the pen. And then I think it must be much cheaper actually as well in the long run, because you don't have to keep buying new cartridges for your pens. And you never have that feeling it's like, oh no, I've run out of cartridges and I've forgotten to order some.
But it's
No,
more, I
so
guess, it's the choice of ink, isn't it, as well? Rather
yeah,
than just
yeah.
yeah.
But I definitely recommend Noodlers for sure as a water resistant for any fountain pens. But if I'm using ink as a wash, I don't know if you do this very often, but I really love Quink Ink. And Quink Ink is something that's been around for donkey's years, hasn't it?
Is that more like a writer's ink?
Yeah, I think so. But what it does is as it dries, it separates into some really lovely blue and yellow hues. It's really, really subtle and you don't notice it at first. It just looks black when it goes on. But as it dries, it just kind of separates and it's really interesting. Far more interesting than other inks as a wash, I think. But I'm not sure. I say I don't know if it goes in pen. Well, must go in pens and dip pens and things like that. But yeah, I prefer it for an actual wash. I'd like a tonal wash. They're great. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to look into that calligraphy fountain pen, definitely. But, shall
Mm.
we move on to markers? Because
Oh
your
yes,
favourite.
my least favourite thing, markers.
So, I've been dabbling again. I used to be really mad on brush pens, and I still like brush pens, I just haven't used them that much for a while. But at the same sort of time, I got some Winsor& and Newton watercolour markers, and I sort of tried them, but you know when you try something, you think, "Yeah, I'm not sure about that," and you put them away. Well, I got
Mm.
them out again recently, and I've been using them just a tiny bit in my sketchbook just to colour up some black and white drawings. And I've decided I actually quite like them. And the good thing about them is, unlike most brush pens, these are actually light fast. So you could use them on a proper drawing and, actually sell that or put it up on the wall and it shouldn't fade too much. And because they're Winsor& and Newton, they're all supposed to match up with their Winsor& and Newton watercolors. So you could do a watercolor drawing and add some detail with these markers. They've got two ends. They've got like it's not that fine, the end, but it's a finer end. And then your favorite are kind of chunkier. Just hang on, let me have a look. I've got one here. I might be lying about that. Oh no, it's more of a brush end. It's not. So one's a kind of a thicker brush sort of one, and one's a finer one. But I've just bought a few more colours in those because you get them in a set. I can't remember, it's about eight or 10 colours. I've just bought a few extra because you know when you get a set and whatever you do, you can't make a colour you want.
Yeah, yeah,
So I wanted like something I could do with like a Caucasian kind of skin tone. You know, if
yeah.
you're just doing a quick sketch, not when you're trying to mix something up. And I had nothing to do that. So I bought a pen sort of to do that. But yeah, definitely worth trying those out again. And it's one of those things again where you've dismissed something and then you take it out again. You think, well, actually, they're better than I thought. And I think some of it is down to just changing tastes as you do things. And some of it's just down to all these things take time to learn how to apply, very much like your
Yeah,
brush pen.
yeah.
And I've also mentioned previously Ohuhu markers. Now these are a really cheap graphic marker, a bit like Copics, but they're much more budget. So whereas Copics will cost you over 100 quid for a decent sized set, you can buy a good set of these for about 30 quid, something like that. And unlike other budget markers, because I have tried some other budget markers, these don't seem to dry out as much. And I've used these when I was doing a lot of online live drawing during the lockdown previously. I was
Yeah,
using them for that, and they're really good if you're just going to flick on a bit of color for a really quick drawing. They just don't
yeah.
take any time to do it. I don't use them for anything polished, but just for little things like that, they're really good.
See, I always think of markers as those big, chunky, chisel-ended things that we used to use at school, you know?
Well, they are as well.
Yeah.
But
Oh, I
these
hate
tend to
those.
be twin, like the
Mm.
Ohuhu are twin ends, so you've got a
Yeah.
finer end.
Well, those Winsor and Newton watercolor markers you were describing sound a bit like Tombow. They do a similar thing, and I've got a set of those actually, just in various different greys,
Oh,
shades of
yeah.
grey. And actually, they're good, and they're water soluble as well. But I don't find them very easy to dissolve, so they're kind of water soluble to a point.
Does that
But
depend on the paper, though? Because
yeah, I think you're right. I was going to
yeah.
say that. I think it just depends on what sketchbook you're using them in. And I believe Ian Fennelly uses them with his watercolors.
Oh, yes, he does, doesn't he? Yeah.
I think he does. And I'm sure he mentioned those actually when we interviewed him. And if you look at his work, he's got some really fabulous, interesting lines and shadows. And I think he uses those Tombows for that purpose. And I must admit, I do like those. I don't use markers as a rule,
Mm.
really.
Well, the real plus point I thought of these Winsor and Newton ones is the fact that they are light fast, or as light fast as
Yeah.
most of their watercolors. So you'll get
Yeah.
some that aren't as much.
Yeah, of
But
course.
there's so few nowadays because in general the markers are made for like the graphic and illustration industry.
Mm,
So it doesn't matter how long they last because generally they'd have been scanned. The piece of work would have been used for whatever, digitized and used for
mm.
whatever. So it doesn't have to last. Whereas if you're doing it for more of an art purpose and it's not in a sketchbook, you want it to last, don't you?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So you're a big fan of Neocolor too, aren't you? So tell us what you love about Neocolor too.
Well, I know you love them as well.
I tried very hard to love them, but I don't get me wrong, I love the look of them. I mean, when somebody who knows what they're doing with Neocolor does them well, then they're so intense, aren't they? The colours are so vibrant.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I prefer Neocolor 2. There's Neocolor 2 and Neocolor 1. Neocolor 2 are water soluble. The number 1, they're not. And they look very much like wax crayons, which I think is why you love them so much. Because they're your favourite, but they feel a little softer, and you
Yeah.
can use them with water to create some really lovely effects. So if you apply them really thickly and then add water, they look very much like a gouache, I would say. But then you can apply them really lightly and add water to get like a watercolor effect. And you can also dip them in water, use them wet and wet, and you can get some really kind of impressionistic type of look. So I absolutely love those. And I have to say, I think they are my favourite medium. And I realized while I was writing my notes for this that I basically like anything that you can put water with it.
Yeah.
It is. It's literally if you can add water to it, I like it.
Yeah.
So I also love Derwent Inktense Blocks. Have you tried these?
I've got the Inktense pencils, and they're brilliant because they're much more. Well, you have to be careful, don't you? Because when you're putting them down, they seem just to be quite subtle, the colours, and then when you add water, it's like having a punch in the face, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. I mean, they're very much the Inktense pencils look like watercolor pencils, don't they? But
Yeah.
they're much punchier, and apparently they're more of an ink rather than a watercolor. So
Mm.
these Derwent Inktense blocks, they're the same material as the pencils, I believe, but in a chunkier kind of thing, very much like a pastel, almost look like a pastel, but with like a square edge. And like you say, the colors are incredibly punchy. One of the good things as well is you can also use them like a watercolor. So if you lay them on their side, if you can imagine looking like a load of square edged pastels laid on their side, you can use them like a watercolor pan. Just dip your brush on them and use them that way. But I love them. And I think both Neocolors and Derwent Intense Blocks, you're going to like those if you like things that you can use loosely and broadly, which is probably why they're not your thing more because you prefer more to be more precise, don't you?
I think I've realised something.
Yeah.
I've realised that, you said about you love anything that dissolves in water.
Yeah.
I've also realised that you love anything as long as they do a chunky version.
I like not having total control.
Yeah.
You love having
I love
control.
the opposite. I
Yeah.
like being in control, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, isn't it, that one artist loves, another one really doesn't.
Yeah.
Because I don't enjoy Neocolors at all. I really don't. But I love using oils, whereas you really don't like the idea of using oils at all.
No.
And I think what it is once we find our thing, it's hard to find anything else that we feel as comfortable with. We kind of get settled in with something and it's like, oh, yeah, now I feel great with using this. And it's hard then to, take that control away by trying something else. I
Yep.
recently tried those Acryla Gouache.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Acryla
I'm
Gouache?
not sure.
Kind of like a new type of gouache, but they've kind of got a acrylic mixed in. And oh, absolutely, I do not like those at all. I know, I really, of all the things I've ever tried, I think they're the worst things I've ever used in my life. I do not like them at all. So I'm going to give you my set when I see you. Um, yeah, I'm sticking to my oils. Thank you very much. But we won't go too much depth about oils because we're talking more about sketching on here, aren't we, and drawing. So obviously, I wouldn't really recommend oils for obvious reasons. But anyone who's thinking of dabbling, I will just say, if you're looking at brands, I would highly recommend Gamblin as your choice of brand because one thing most people associate with oils is the smell. And not just of the paint itself, but of all the mediums and the thinners. And there's no way, obviously, that can be good for anyone to be breathing in. And I would also be very wary of anything that says odor free thinners because while you can't smell those thinners, they still evaporate into the air. So I actually think that they're more dangerous than the smelly ones because at least if they smell, you're more likely to open a window than if they don't. And then you don't really realize you're breathing in so much in. And Gamblin make this thinner and it's called Gamsol. And it's not just odorless, but it doesn't evaporate into the air. So you're not unwittingly getting high when you're painting. You know, all of their products are developed with safety in mind. So, you know, if you're going to walk into my studio, you would never know that it was an oil painter studio at all because it just doesn't smell of anything. So that is definitely something I would recommend over any other brand because of the safety aspect, but also because their paints are really good quality as well. I love their paints.
Are they more expensive than other artist brands?
No, well, not really, because it's difficult, isn't it? Because you get some that are really expensive and some that are really cheap.
Yeah.
Obviously, I would always go for an artist quality. So, and there's a variety of different prices, isn't there? I mean, I don't think that you can put a price on health and safety when it comes to oil paints. I really don't. And so, if they are marginally more expensive than some, they're less expensive than others. So I don't really think it's.
No. Do they do a student range?
No, I don't. Well, if they do, I didn't know they do.
No. Okay.
I don't know. Actually, is the answer to that. I don't think so. I've not seen a student range. No.
Well, I forgot to put this in my notes, but I love White Knight's watercolor paints. I haven't used them for a little while, but it's a Russian make. But I think they are more like artist quality because I've always before, because I've not been a connoisseur, like a real, it's not like something I've done to sell. So
Hmm.
I've just dabbled with more student quality, I guess, or not the artist ones, and trying those. It's like, oh my god, the difference. They were just, and they're not mega expensive. They're probably a mid sort of one, but the color was so intense compared to more of the student quality stuff I'd used.
Yeah, I mean, student quality stuff is fine if you really are a beginner and you just want to know if it's something you're going to like as a hobby even first. Yeah, just don't go and spend loads of money on artist quality stuff. But then again, you also have to realize that if you use student quality stuff, it's never going to be as good. And
No.
sometimes you can be compromising the finished result because you chose a cheaper material. So it's hard, isn't it? Although some of the student quality stuff these days is actually really good.
Well, I do wonder if, say, going back sort of 20 or 30 years, I wonder if the student quality now is what the artist quality was like then.
Quite possibly,
Yeah,
yeah.
wouldn't surprise me. A
Yeah.
bit how computers are, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I've got some student quality watercolors which I have had for years knocking around the bottom of a watercolor box I never use, and they're really not good. I'm not going to mention the brand, but
No.
they're not good. Um, and you can really tell the difference when you get an artist quality watercolor and you put them with a student quality. I think
Yeah.
in the intensity, the amount they granulate, and you know.
Have you tried the White Knights ones?
No,
No.
no, I haven't.
I'll have to bring those. You have to when we can eventually get out again,
Yeah, one
you'll have
day when we
to test.
get to actually
Yeah.
see each other
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Do you know, we'll see each other and we'll go, "God, she's aged."
I think I have.
I think we've all aged in this pandemic year.
Yeah. Um, so moving on to you finished on your paints, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So moving on to surfaces and papers. Now I absolutely love C White sketchbooks. I don't know if you use these.
No.
I really like the hardback ones and the ones that are just filled with what they call all media paper. Now, what it is, it's just a cartridge paper, but it's got some sort of coating on it. So it's much better than normal old cartridge paper at taking water. I mean, it's not to the level of watercolor paper or a proper mixed media paper, but it does a pretty decent job if you're just using like a pen and adding water brush to it or just adding a little bit of a wash. Absolutely love that, and I just love the hardbackness. I guess they have a slight yellow to the it's not a pure white, I don't think, the paper, but I really love those sketchbooks. Just for the
You just said a word that I just can't get in my head. A hardbackness. You love the hardbackness. There's a new one.
really, really hardback. Yeah.
Does it buckle? Does it buckle though
The
if you
hardback.
put
Um,
if you if you put a wash on it, like a heavy wash, would it
oh,
buckle?
it would if you put a heavy wash on it,
Yeah.
but if you're
Yeah.
just gonna use,
Mm.
so I wouldn't use it to do a full-on watercolor painting,
No.
but it would do perfectly well if you were just doing a little sketch and adding a
Yeah.
little wash or something like that,
Yeah.
and they're really, really, really I can't get it out of my head now, um, and they're relatively cheap. Not cheap, cheap, but, if you wanted something to go out and do loads of sketching in, they've got, like, about 96 pages in these things, so
Mm.
really decent quality as well. And then one of my favourites for mixed media is the Canson Imagine mixed media paper. The only thing I wish was it a little bit heavier weight, but I really love the smoothness of this paper. It's great for Neocolors because I always find that works a lot better smooth. Um, there's also a Daler mixed media paper that's pretty good as well, but I just prefer the smoothness of the Canson Imagine. And I've also just discovered Daler Rowney mixed media art boards. Have you tried these?
No.
Now, they're about 1 mil thick, or maybe even slightly more. And they're obviously a mixed media surface, but the great thing about it is you can pile paint on there or whatever, and it's not going to buckle because it's so thick. So,
Is it expensive?
yes. Well, not
Right.
well. I say expensive, yes and no. So you probably get about 10 boards in a pack, and there's 20 quid. So they're a couple of pounds each. The boards in it, so a lot
How
more.
big are they?
That's A3. That's an A3 one.
Right.
So they're not expensive, but they're too expensive if you're just gonna, if you're gonna use it like a sketchbook, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I find them great for doing things like if I wanted to make an acrylic background and then draw over the top of that, I can do that perfectly well with paper if I tape it all down, but I do get a little bit of buckling. But if you use that, you get nothing. So definitely want to try.
Well, Strathmore do some sketchbooks, don't they, that are toned, have like either the grey or the sort of buff paper, which is nice, and that's a mixed media. I quite like those. But I can't remember what they're called actually. Strathmore. I can't remember, but it's a mixed media, and basically you can get it in hardback, or you can get it in as just like a pad. And I think I've got the pad, and I've got a sketchbook actually that I haven't used yet. I'm going to use next year, and it's got the
Why are you
grey paper
saving it?
inside. Because I like to finish. I'm one of these people that I like to finish one sketchbook before I start another.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I haven't got. Some people have loads on the go. I like to get one done and then think, oh, I'm going to use that one now.
Yeah.
But also Stillman and Byrne, they make a variety of sketchbooks with all different mediums in mind. But I really like the Alpha series. I think they do Alpha, Beta, Zeta, Delta. I think they do all sorts. But the Alpha one I really like because they handle a wash really, really nicely and they don't buckle. So that's a really good choice for a sketchbook. But my favourite sketchbook is the Canson XL because first of all, I like its ring boundness.
I used to hate ring boundness. Didn't you?
Yeah,
Because of the
I used to hate
tampon
being
issue.
about. Would you like to explain that,
Yeah.
Tara?
Sandra once got a tampon stuck in the ring binders of her sketchbook.
I did, yeah. It was in the bottom of my handbag knocking about, and I pulled my sketchbook out, and there was one just got caught in the rings, which is quite embarrassing. um, but yeah, I basically like them because sometimes when you have a hardback, you can feel more precious about it because you almost sort of think, well, I can't tear it out if I don't like it. Whereas a Canson XL, obviously, because it's got a ring binder, it's it's you can if you want to. I don't tend to tear paper out anymore, but because I tend to be more accepting of bad sketches than I
You just put
used to be.
Post-its over them now.
Yeah, or you can just stick a bit of collage over and draw over the top. But yeah, I love that paper in particular because it can take a real good wash, but it's also a really, oh God, I'm going to have to edit so many reallys out of this episode now, I think. um, it's a really bright white, like a
Yeah.
really stark white, which I love because some sketchbooks are kind of like this off white, like chewing gum white, or just kind of this they're not that lovely bright white. And what I find with the Canton XLs, because it is a really bright white, the colours seem more vibrant, I think.
Yeah, see, I'm really surprised. I'm not surprised because I've known for a while that you like that sketchbook. But if
Yeah.
you'd have told me 2 years ago that you would love that sketchbook, I wouldn't have believed it.
Why?
Because I would just think you would hate the cover.
Oh, yeah, you see, I did always have cover issues. Like, it's not a very attractive cover.
Yeah.
But now I just think I can cover it if I want to with my own sort of style. I don't bother now, though. Yeah, you're
No.
right. I've
Yeah.
grown out of that. Isn't it
Yeah.
weird?
Yeah.
So, moving on to tools and
Oh, what
gadgets.
about your canvas? You didn't tell us about your canvas.
Oh, well, yeah, do you know, I was going to talk about the canvases I use, and I think, oh, we're talking about sketching here, but okay, I will just share the make of canvas that I like to use as a general thing for my oil paints. I use the Bell Art, and I use the Italian linen because it's lovely.
No.
Because it's lovely, I like that. I like.
Can I tell you about a sketchbook that has got a really lovely cover that you would absolutely love? And I don't know if
Yeah.
you've got any of these, but Pink Pig watercolor sketchbooks.
No.
Now I have some of these, and they are just they are ring bound, but they've got, you know, when you get like a material and it's got almost tiny bits of other things, almost like handmade paper.
Yeah.
Some of their covers are a bit like that, and they're like a board cover and a board back, and they look absolutely gorgeous. And they have a really nice, smooth watercolor paper in them. And I have a few of them, and I use the A5 ones I bought, but I've got about 2 A4 ones, I think, and I won't touch them because they're too nice.
That's a problem, isn't
Yeah,
it? Are they ring bound or
yeah,
hardback?
ring bound. But
You see, so you
you
can
might
always.
you might be safe because I don't know if a tampon will fit in there. They're quite narrow.
But are they expensive?
Um, no, not that expensive, no. Probably more expensive than, say, like I was talking about the Sea White sketchbooks, but then
Yeah,
they do cartridge ones, so I'm talking about the watercolor ones, which are always more expensive anyway, aren't they? Watercolor
yeah,
paper books. So,
yeah. They are,
no.
and you get about 10 pages in them.
Yeah, you only get 20, I think you get about 20 or 25 sheets in these. But I'm
Yeah,
guessing an A4 is maybe 12 quid. I can't remember
yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
but
Same
yeah.
thing with sketchbooks. They can be quite expensive. I actually tried. You can get one called Artisan. Is it Artisan or
Oh,
Artisan?
teaser, I think, is it?
Arteza, yeah, and you can buy them in like packs of. In fact, I think they only come in packs of 3. The ones I tried, and um, they're really good. They're cheap, but they're really good for just sketching with pen and ink or pencil.
Yeah.
But I do not like them for watercolor at all.
I remember you
Be-
saying it didn't go
yeah,
on right.
it kind of it's really weird. It kind of absorbs the watercolor, and you can almost see the paper kind of disintegrating where you put the brush. It's really weird, but as I say, for a cheap sketchbook that you with lots and I think they've got about 60 pages in each. So it's really good value if you're just going to be using them for sketching um, with pen and ink and whatnot. But it's not a bright white either, which is again I find that a bit more off-putting. But anyway, have you finished talking about sketchbooks and
Yes, I have.
surfaces now?
Sorry, I'll shut up
Because
now.
no, that's fine. We're going to talk about tools, aren't we,
Oh,
and little
yes.
gadgets.
Yeah.
So I noticed when I was looking at your bullet points, I noticed that you've put kids' sponge brushes, and only you would use those. What is that about?
Well, I was obviously struggling with my list of gadgets.
I'll
Um,
say.
and I've got these, you get them in like, real cheap shops. And you
Yeah,
get like and
like yeah.
householdy type places like Wilkinson's
Mm,
and Pound Stretcher type places. And it's basically you get a little bag full of they're like it's a plastic thing with a sponge on the end, and then
yeah,
a
I've
kid's
seen them.
brush, and then little foamy comb things. And they're absolutely great for making backgrounds. Now, I don't like paint much, as you know, but I will make backgrounds for things. So I'll get my acrylic paint out. You get these little kids spongy roller. I have got a proper brayer now, but the spongy roller works quite well as well. And you can just make some lovely marks with them. So I think they're a great tool. And they're only about £1, and you get loads of them.
Yeah, I'll leave those to you. The slightly more adult version
Oh, we getting
that
sexy and dirty now.
I personally like is the Da Vinci Travel Watercolor Brush. Slightly different than kids' sponges.
Yeah.
Um, they are well. You've seen me use mine, haven't you? When
Yeah.
we've been out on sketching trips, and they're basically like a little Kolinsky. I think they're made of red Kolinsky sable and sort of synthetic as well, which hold plenty of paint. They've got a really good point, but they've got a threaded barrel. So that barrel then acts as both a lid and a handle. So when you take them out, they're encased in this handle, and you unscrew it, and then you screw the lid onto the end of the brush, which then creates your handle to paint with. And it makes them perfect for taking out and about on a sketching trip. So if you're an urban sketcher, they're ideal. And the lid, it's also got like ventilation holes in it as well, so the brush can still dry out even when the lid's
Makes
on.
I can breathe.
Yeah, so they can breathe. I've got two sizes, but you can get them anywhere from really tiny to really big. So there's lots of different sizes to choose from, but I really recommend those because they feel nice to use as well. I've also got a pure Kolinsky sable brush, which was extremely expensive, and quite honestly, I don't really think that it's worth paying 150 quid for one brush.
Oh,
It was a
wow.
it was a birthday present years ago, and it is. Don't get me wrong; it's a beautiful brush, and what is lovely about it is that you can um, fit a huge amount of pigment into it, and it does come to a beautiful point. But I think now you can get so many cheaper type brushes that do a really good job that you don't really need to be spending that kind of money on a brush.
No. God. I must admit, when we went to London the last time, I was trying to think of a way to protect my brush heads. I mean, that
Yeah.
would work really well. And I think I ended up taking like a Smartie, like Smartie tubes. I
Yes.
think I was trying to put my brushes in those and put it
Uh,
so they would be upwards
yeah.
because it is a nightmare, isn't it?
You
Taking.
well, yeah, and you don't have to worry about that at all with these ones because the lid protects them completely.
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse if you've got brushes knocking about in a pencil case. Then that quite often happen is the brush itself can end up bent.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, it is really hard to get them back to a point once they've been damaged. You can't.
You could do with them coming, how the water brushes have the plastic ones with the
Yeah.
reservoir. Other
Mm.
brushes could do with having bits like that on them, couldn't they?
Yeah, because they're good, aren't they? You can get those
Yeah.
reservoir brushes, which are great. But I don't like the actual brush themselves because they're kind of nylon, aren't they? I don't
Well,
like
that
them.
doesn't bother me, but that's because I don't
Mm.
paint, I guess.
Yeah.
But some other gadgets. So I've just discovered these double-ended metal pencil holders, and what I like about them is not that they're double-ended; it's just the fact that one end will actually fit a Neocolor.
All right.
Absolutely perfect for it. So you can get them on Amazon. They're like a coloured metal. There's no real brand name for them. I think they just like come from China or somewhere.
Mm.
But fit a Neocolor perfectly. And I was having a nightmare before because I tend to stick to the same colours more or less with Neocolors. But I'd end up buying all these tins and then they'd get smaller and smaller. So I'd buy another tin but I'd have tins full of, little like 1 inch of Neocolor.
Oh, yeah.
And
Then
they're
it's hard
so
to use, isn't it?
really hard to draw them, but they're absolutely perfect with these things. So that's really good.
Well,
Uh,
you can get them, can't you, as well? The pencil holders that do the same for a little tiny short pencil, so you
yeah.
use the whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, they're good as well, but none of those would actually fit. It was hard to find one that would actually fit a Neocolor because
Yeah.
they're a bit wider than um, pencils. And also, when I was looking, I was thinking these would probably work if you've got oil pastels. I'm guessing a lot of those would fit depending on the size of your oil pastel as well. But really helpful they were. And then light boxes. I think we've mentioned these before, but for years I wanted a light box. But I don't know if you remember, they used to be these massive chunky things,
Mm.
really weighty, would take up loads of room. But now you can get them and they're just like a thin panel plastic with LED lights and they cost about a tenner. So they're really useful if you want to trace off some art that you've done. So say you were drawing a character or something and you think, oh, I haven't drawn that arm very well. I want it further up or further over. You just trace over it on your light box, and alter those bits. Or you could do a drawing in on a piece of paper and then transfer it to your watercolor paper or whatever. And as long as the paper's not too thick, you can just about get away with, a not too thick watercolor paper and see through it.
You can get the ones as well where you can adjust the light to
Yeah,
really bright as well, or not so light.
yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, people do say you could use something
Mm.
like an iPad or a tablet, but I really don't fancy pressing on my
No,
iPad or tablet.
no, I wouldn't think that was a very good idea at all. And for the sake of £10, £12, I don't see the point.
No.
So, my gadget of choice is much cheaper, actually, probably much less than £10, and it's a shaving brush. So, quite often when I show pictures on Instagram of my progress, people say, "Why is there a shaving brush in your studio?" And the reason I have a shaving brush in my studio, and when I say a shaving brush, it's one of those, those big fat sort of brushes
Old-fashioned
men,
ones, yeah.
yeah, the old fashioned type that men use to sort of foam their faces up.
Yeah, with soap. They used to actually use proper,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I use one of those to dust off my paintings before adding new layers, and this helps prevent the dust from getting caught onto the new layer of paint. So that's a really handy little tip. But you can, if you get a decent quality one that doesn't drop its hairs, you can actually use them as well to blend really large areas of paint, which I've done before. And that's a really handy tip. It's a great brush for that. What else? Oh, yes, another handy tip I've got, and again, this is a really, really cheap little thing to buy, but really handy. I bought from a chemist a little tiny spray bottle, which I fill up with water when I go out sketching, and I use them to charge up my watercolors. And by that, I mean, when you open up your palette and then the pans are all really dry, and it can take a while to make them workable with a brush. But if you spray the pans as soon as you open the pot with water, um, then they're kind of starting to soften straight away. And by the time you dip your brush in, they've already softened, and it makes such a difference. You discovered that not too long ago, didn't you,
Yeah, I
Tara?
did. I think I'd seen it before in the past, and I thought, it doesn't make any difference. And then I did it, and I thought, oh my
It really
God. Yeah,
does,
it does.
yeah.
It's like
Mm.
worlds apart, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. And even in my studio, if I'm doing a little watercolor sketch, the first thing I do when I open the palette is just spray them.
Yeah.
So, and also a stylish accessory is a sports wristband, which I always wear now when I'm sketching outdoors because it's perfect for wiping a wet brush onto, and it saves having to carry around a ton of kitchen roll or a rag. And well, we went out sketching together, didn't we, Tara? And you wore a headband instead,
Yeah,
which
well,
was quite comical.
it was taking the mick, wasn't it? If you check
Yeah,
our YouTube videos, we've got one
yeah,
about a watercolor tip, and we actually found the tip from Kosher, didn't we? Kosher
yes,
Kuna.
we did. Yeah.
I think it was
Yeah.
one of her Draw Tip Tuesdays or something. We saw her talk about that.
Yeah, and I believe also Lynn Chapman does the same. But yeah, it's so much easier than having to constantly get out tissues. And it's something that's such a simple idea, but makes such a big difference.
Um, I wonder if you call this a gadget or not, but when we went urban sketching last time, I had my little sketching stool, didn't I? And it's
Mm.
amazing, isn't it?
Oh, fantastic.
But it really is. This thing is
I was so jealous.
yeah, it's called I'm gonna get this wrong, a Leafy, I might be Lesfit, Leafy sketching stool. It's spelled Lesfit, but it folds up incredibly small, so you can fit it in a relatively small bag, and it's really light as well. I mean, you are quite close to the ground, but it is so much better than just,
Try
sitting
and sit
direct
on the
yeah,
floor.
sit on the floor or whatever, and it's just the
It's
only tricky
quite
thing
easy to put up, is it? Or
that is the only tricky thing.
ah,
It's sort of got elastic within the legs. It's metal legs, but then elastic within it, so you kind of twist it round, and it does take a bit of fiddling to get that right. So that's the only downside.
mm,
But definitely worth having that. I couldn't believe how light it was.
yeah,
Um, but if you don't want to do something like that, and you do want to go out about sketching, what we had before that was some foam camping cushions, didn't we?
yeah, they were really handy as well.
Yeah, and I got those. I think they're about £1 on Amazon. I treated you.
Yes,
Yes.
but my cushion
Yeah.
that I had in my bag was basically a sheet of kitchen roll. So I was using kitchen roll, and Tara bought me this travel cushion, which I just thought, oh, that's such a luxury. And I was so worried about getting this thing
Oh
dirty that
god.
I put it in like plastic. I put it in this plastic freezer bag, so when I sat on it, it stayed clean. And what was so funny is we went to Brighton, didn't we, to do a
Yeah.
sketching trip, and I was trying to sit on this wall and I kept sliding off. So in the end, I had to give up with the plastic and just use it for what it is. But it's so handy.
Yeah, I think because we got to the cafe and you said, "Oh, I've got you something to sit on." And you gave me this big plastic zip up bag, and I said, "Well,
Yeah.
I've got you a cushion."
But it's what's really handy is when you sometimes when you're sketching, it might have been raining, you want to find somewhere to sit, and there's a perfect chair and a perfect bench, but it's wet, and
Yeah.
it's just that, and it
Bird
saves
poo.
you. Yeah, it saves you have bird poo. Yeah, it saves you having to kind of stand up. I find standing sketching really hard to
It is,
do.
yeah, it is hard, yeah,
Some people do it effortlessly. I can't do it at all. I have to be sitting down.
yeah. So definitely get yourself a foam camping cushion for £1.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I don't know if anyone else does this, but I've got art materials in my cupboard I'm yet to try. I've got some Carbothello pastel pencils. I got them for Christmas last year, and I actually asked for them. I think they were on my wish list, and people rave about them, and I know they do amazing things with them. But for some reason, I'm yet to experiment with them. What about you? Have you
No,
got stuff like that?
no, I haven't got anything I haven't really tried. I've got things I tried and I don't like, and that's frustrating, especially if you spent a decent amount of money on something that you were sure you were going to love.
Well, the Acryla Gouache was expensive, wasn't it?
Oh, it really was, and I was like, oh, and really, what I should have done is I should have. I had some other things I should have bought, which I know I would have got use out of. But anyway, I spent the money on these acrylic gouache, and I just really don't like them, and I'm never going to like them. I know I'm not. Um,
You should have just
so
bought one pot, maybe, shouldn't you?
yeah, and tried it out.
Yeah.
So what I would say is don't spend too much money on something if you get a chance to try them first. I mean, I really wish, like I say, I hadn't spent that money on those acrylic gouache, but also don't give up on something too quickly if you don't like it, because I remember hating that brush pen at first, but now I wouldn't be without it. So
Do you not
I
think you
think,
might change your mind about the Acryla Gouache? What about if you put some, we spoke before about putting
yeah,
some,
we did, we
yeah,
did. I could
retarder
try
in it.
it with some retarder in it and to like see if that makes it any better. But I'm pretty sure that you're going to end up with those. But I think the beauty of having a friend to go out sketching with is that we get to try each other's stuff, don't we, Tara? So we've quite often found things like me with the Pentel brush pen and you with the markers that you liked.
Pigma
It's
Sensei, yeah.
yeah, Pigma pens. So it's kind of one way of trying before you buy. Or you might have things you can swap. So it might be that you hate one thing and I like the idea of that, or the other way around. It's the sort of thing you can do if you've got somebody with a like-minded interest that you see. So it's a great way of trying something out first. So my last tip though is if you don't have a sketching chum, then find one.
What a big tip that is. And all you
Because
need
they
to
can
do is start a podcast and you'll get
because
to know
yeah,
someone.
yeah, because they can be really handy. You're a very handy person to know, Tara.
Oh God, what brilliant advice. Anyway, to follow that brilliant advice, shall I read out read out the answer to our previous question, but I'll tell you what the question is first. And it was, the Mona Lisa has her own mailbox in the Louvre because of all the love letters she receives. If you could send a letter of any kind to a piece of art, what would your letter be about? And what piece of art would you write it to?
So I've got Adrian Sutherland. The Scream. My 6-year-old eyes were too young to know anything of art, too young to know you were famous, too young to realise you had etched yourself into my mind. Many years passed before I saw you again and felt myself almost jealous to discover that I hadn't found you first. You hold my gaze from time I cannot count and provoke thoughts I cannot explain. You paralyse and mesmerise me. I wonder if one day we might scream together and feel a mutual understanding. Me of your pain and you of mine. Until then, take care, won't you?
I think
That is deep.
I know, that's what I
That is
thought. It's
deep,
amazing,
deep.
isn't it? Right. I've got Bethany Kelly, and she says, a letter to Vincent Van Gogh's self-portrait, telling him he's not alone and that his art is beautiful and some of the most loved in the world.
I like the way you give me the epic ones.
I know. I realised I made a mistake and given myself a long one. I usually
Mine all seem epic.
I know. I arranged them quite well.
Right, so I've got another one here for Vincent Van Gogh from Annette Courtney. So she says, I would send a letter to Vincent van Gogh about his self-portrait after he had cut his ear off. I would tell him what a genius he was and how many people would absolutely love his work in the future. I would say that I understand his angst, that I have a friend with bipolar, and that there is an upside. I hope I would be able to give him some comfort. It breaks my heart to know how desperately unhappy he was. So true, actually, isn't it? Because back then, people didn't kind of understand mental health very well at all. And certainly nobody would have ever heard of bipolar. And that's almost certainly what he had, I would have thought. So,
yeah, people just got locked up, basically, didn't they?
yeah, and just not understood at all. It's so sad, really.
So I've got one from Samantha Lane, and it's Salvador Dali, The Elephants.
Yeah.
I would tell Dali how I was first captured by his landscape, simple and yet dramatic, with its red deep sky. Then I would tell him how many hours I spent dreaming up a backstory for the characters. The elephants with their strange stilt legs and floating obelisks, I don't know what that means, and for the two tiny figures running towards each other beneath. Surely signalling a meeting with extreme surreal importance. Painting I've dreamt about many times, yet it still remains a mystery. What are obelisks?
I don't know.
Oh,
Obelisks.
okay. We'll
I'm not
have to
sure.
Google that afterwards.
Yeah. I've got Carol Whitmore. Oh dear, you've given me this one and I can't. Dear Venus on the half shell, you are beautiful. I learned about Mr. Botticelli because of you. I always knew you were beautiful in the pages of my art books as I grew up, but never did I ever know really how beautiful you are until I saw you in that gallery from the Uffizi Museum in Florence, Italy. I don't know if I said that right, Uffizi.
Right.
Larger than life, you commanded the room with beauty and grace beyond my teenage artist's eyes. I wanted to stay there with you longer than I got to, but thankful for the time we had.
They're so
These are very
beautiful,
romantic, aren't
I
they?
know.
These are really they're proper love letters.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say, I can imagine if I saw a picture and that someone was eating something, I'd probably just say, oh, I wish I had that pasty you got. It wouldn't be anything as deep as that.
I'd be going, who would drink out of a silver goblet? Have you not
Yeah.
heard of glasses?
Yeah. We'd be very shallow, wouldn't we?
We're not very cultured,
No.
are we?
I've got another Salvador Adali one, so he's obviously very
Mm.
popular, and it's by Nick Tate West. And she says, "You're not about the past, are you? You're about the state of mind during the future COVID-19 pandemic. Admit it."
Oh,
I'm going to have to go and have a look at that one.
I have got Maya Castaneda. I hope I've pronounced that right. Um, Dear girl with the pearl earring, such a beautiful, mysterious lady to draw. I wish all our earrings are floating mysteriously like yours. I learned a lot from you too. Actually, a lot of people do draw the girl with the pearl earring, don't they? Do you remember when we went to Brighton and we went to a gallery and there was a guy there who was recreating the girl with the pearl earring, almost identical in every way, apart from she was blowing bubble gum.
Yes. He was
It
doing
was
some
great, wasn't
brilliant
it?
stuff. He was putting a spin on all traditional paintings, wasn't he?
Yeah, like a real modern
Yeah.
twist. It was great.
Yeah. But I've got Sue Higgins, and she says, "I would write a letter to the piece of art I created in junior school, which the teacher didn't like, and I screwed it up and threw it away. I would say, you may not be perfect proportionally, but I would continue to strive for becoming a better artist so you can be shown to the world. You are beautiful in your own way, and your spirit has been locked away in me for the last 50 years. Thank you for being there in my subconscious and helping me get back to my true creative self." I love that one.
And it's surprising, isn't it, how these teachers can create such
I think it's shocking. It's
we hear it.
shocking.
I mean, I'm hoping that that's more something that went on a long time ago before people had more of an idea of how to be with children. I don't know.
I bet it's
I
just the same. I would guess it's the
Yeah,
same.
it breaks my heart when I hear so many artists saying that they didn't take up art again for years and years because they were told they were no good, and it's really sad, really
I don't
sad.
get it as well, because if you, as a teacher, saw a kid in junior schools drawing,
Mm,
even if you don't like it, wouldn't you just say to that kid, "Oh, I really like that bit. Here's a suggestion for..." You'd give a suggestion, wouldn't you? Not
yeah,
not like, "I don't like it."
yeah, and screw it up. That's
Yeah,
horrible, horrible.
you'd be encouraging. Yeah.
Anyway, Kim Hine, she says, we got a lot of Vincent Van Gogh ones here, haven't
Yeah.
we? I would send a letter to Vincent Van Gogh, a letter to any one of his self-portraits and offer him a listening ear. Oh, I love that. I wonder if she meant to say that because he's
Probably
only got the
not.
one.
Yeah.
A listening ear, a helping hand, a friend and a decent meal. Vincent makes me so sad when I read about his life. I went to see that film actually at the cinema. About Vincent van Gogh, and I was really surprised when I learned all about his life.
Oh, I haven't
It's-
seen that. Okay, I've got Sue Watson. She says, "I'll send it to Matisse's snail to thank it for the joy and inspiration it's given me for many years."
So we have a brand new question for you, which is, what is your favourite art material and why? So what is your favourite art material and why?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to some suggestions there, trying some new stuff.
Mm,
And
yeah.
as always, you can tweet us your answers at Kick Creatives or let us know in the Facebook group, which if you haven't joined, I suggest you do. We'll put the question up there and also on the Facebook page, and of course on our Instagram, which is Kick in the Creatives. So we are now going to be taking our Christmas break. But before we go, we want to say thank you to all of you for supporting us and for continuing to listen to the podcast. We'll be back on the 11th of January.
Yeah, and we wish you all a really wonderful Christmas, and fingers crossed next year will be a whole lot better for all of us than 2020 has. So,
Yeah. Not just
um,
happy Christmas though, 'cause we've got other people who don't celebrate Christmas, for any
of
other
course.
holiday that you're celebrating.
Yeah, for any other holiday. Anyway, meanwhile, we hope we have given you the kick in the creatives you needed. And don't forget to pop over to our website at kickinthecreatives.com to find out how you can take part in some of our upcoming creative challenges. And of course, there you can also subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the podcast, we'd be really grateful if you would leave us a little review on iTunes, or even just a 5-star rating if you don't have much time.
And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, the Kicking the Creatives YouTube channel, and subscribe on there where we create art tip videos.
And if you do enjoy what we do and you'd like to help support us with Kicking the Creatives, you can now do so by buying us a coffee. Or actually, at this time of year, it's going to be a Bailey's for me. What about you, Tara?
Maybe a Prosecco.
Oh, yum, yum. Yeah, so you can find the link on how you can do that on our website. So that's it. Have a great holiday, whatever you're celebrating, and we will be back in January.
Yep. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, perhaps you'd like to share it and leave a review for us on iTunes. Back soon.
So now we're going to take some time for the Christmas break, but before we want to go, I'm going to say that again. So now we're going to be taking time for our Christmas break, but before we want, I can't say that. Let's try again.
Are you drunk already?
No.
You haven't started drinking for Christmas yet then?
No. So
you don't like eggnog,
no, I
do
don't
you?
like eggnog.
No.
Just the first Christmas drink I could think of. Right. So we're now going to be taking our Christmas...
What is eggnog, by the
God,
way?
will you let...
I just want to know what eggnog is. Has it got egg in it?
It's raw eggs and whiskey or brandy, one or the other.
That's disgusting.
I'm not quite sure. Right, can I try it again now?
Yeah.
Yeah.